I did a video about Hitler's 50th birthday engraved gun. This is the replica of the gun that Hitler was given on his 50th birthday.
When Tucker Carlson mentioned a rumored Nazi artifact in a 2024 broadcast, few took it seriously. But what if he was on to something real, something far worse than we imagined? On Adolf Hitler's 50th birthday, a gift was placed into his hands, a gold-plated pistol. But this was no ordinary weapon, which is obviously meant to imply that it belonged to Adolf Hitler due to the music insignia. What happened to it after the war and where it ended up is a trail soaked in secrecy, ideology, and something even darker. Hitler's golden gun was real, and it's far worse than we imagined. The birth of a symbol. On April 20, 1939, Adolf Hitler's 50th birthday was marked by a spectacle of unprecedented magnitude, a military display that seemed to shake the very ground beneath Berlin. As fighter planes roared overhead in tight formations, tanks rumbled down streets lined with eager spectators, and rows of soldiers marched in perfect unison, their boots echoing like thunder. The event was designed to showcase not just the power of the Nazi regime but its very dominance over the world stage. It was a calculated gesture, one meant to dazzle both the domestic audience and foreign powers alike, leaving no doubt about the invincibility of the Reich. However, amidst the pageantry of war machinery and the cult of personality surrounding Hitler, another more subtle symbol of the furious rising tyranny was unveiled in private. Hidden behind the fortress of military might was a lavish collection of gifts, some designed to flatter Hitler's vanity, others to solidify his image as a man above all others. Yet among these offerings, one stood out in both its beauty and its terrifying significance: a gold-plated Walther PP pistol. Of the gun that Hitler was given on his 50th birthday, created by the renowned German arms manufacturer Karl Walther, the weapon was no mere firearm. Its gleaming surface was etched with delicate floral engravings, and its ivory grips bore Hitler's initials AH in gold, a personal touch that would forever link the weapon to the dictator's obsession with luxury and control. This weapon, gleaming with gold and imbued with a deep symbolic meaning, was far more than just a tool of violence. It represented the excesses of the Nazi regime, its thirst for power, and Hitler's unshakable belief in his own superiority. The pistol was not a weapon for protection nor a trophy from victory, it was a statement. To Hitler, it was the embodiment of his own immortality and his vision of the Reich as an enduring, unstoppable force. Following its presentation, Hitler took the Walther PP with him to Munich, where it would remain hidden in his private apartment for the next 6 years. In the quiet of that room, the gold pistol was locked away, untouched, a silent symbol of a regime destined for ruin yet still clinging to the final days of the Reich. By the spring of 1945, the world that Hitler had sought to create was crumbling. The war that he had once believed would secure German supremacy was now a dying conflict, with the Allies closing in on all fronts. Soviet forces had encircled Berlin, while the Americans pushed through the southern reaches of Germany. Hitler, delusional and increasingly isolated, had retreated into the depths of the Führer bunker, the underground bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery in Berlin. There, surrounded by his most loyal followers, he continued to issue orders that were as irrelevant as they were desperate, each command more bizarre than the last, as he prepared for the inevitable collapse. As the Soviet forces closed in on Berlin, U.S. Army Lieutenant Palm, part of the 45th Infantry Division, was tasked with a covert mission to locate the Führer's last stronghold. With the help of German defectors eager to end the war, Palm's unit made its way to Munich, where Hitler had once resided in comfort, far from the devastation now engulfing Germany. On April 29, 1945, Palm's squad entered Hitler's private Munich apartment, their mission clear: to find any trace of the dictator before it was too late. The apartment, eerily empty, betrayed no signs of the chaos unfolding just miles away. There was no sign of Hitler, who had already fled to Berlin, where he would take his own life just days later in the silence of the room. Palm and his men scoured the area, rifling through drawers and cabinets. It was here in a drawer of Hitler's office desk that Palm's eyes fell upon a velvet-lined box. Inside it, resting untouched for 6 years, was the Walther PP pistol, its gold plating gleaming in the dim light. Without ceremony, Palm slipped the weapon into his tunic, a silent trophy from a war that was still far from finished. The pistol, now far from the hands of the man who had once wielded it as a symbol of power, would go on to take on a life of its own. Its journey, like the legacy of the Reich, would become a part of history's dark and twisted tapestry. What began as a gift of power, excess, and ego now found itself as a relic of the past, taken from the remnants of a crumbling regime, destined to remain an eerie reminder of the darkness that once sought to engulf the world. A war souvenir vanishes. The gun, an ornate Walther PP, had become much more than just a firearm. It was a symbol of the twisted grandeur of the Nazi regime, a piece of history carried with it the weight of Adolf Hitler's perverse narcissism. Lieutenant Palm, who had stumbled upon it during his service in the final days of the war, had no idea how his life would forever be intertwined with the weapon. Wounded in a firefight on the outskirts of Munich, Lieutenant Palm found himself in a daze, barely clinging to life in the midst of battle. As the dust settled and the sounds of war faded, he couldn't shake the strange object that had caught his eye, the golden gun. Its sinister beauty and connection to the madness he had just survived made it feel cursed, as though it carried the very spirit of the Reich with it. Yet, amidst the chaos of war, there was no immediate desire to claim it. Palm, in his own trauma, could only see it as a reminder of a battle far worse than anything he had experienced firsthand. In the fall of 1945, back in the calm of Salisbury, North Carolina, Palm didn't speak of the gun. It seemed as if he had no intention of showing it off, unlike many of his fellow soldiers who took home souvenirs as mementos of their victory. Instead, Palm entrusted it to his friend, Reverend Charles Woodbridge of Savannah, Georgia. No explanation was given for the transfer. Perhaps Palm saw something in the gun, an ominous weight that was better left hidden away. It might have been the gesture of a man who saw his duty as done, who wished to leave behind the horrors of the war, even if they clung to him in the form of a golden pistol. Or perhaps it was a man who believed the weapon had cursed him and now sought to pass it to someone else. Woodbridge, a humble man who had seen his share of death, kept the weapon in his study, occasionally sharing it with his closest friends. It was a token of history, sure, but one far darker than any ordinary piece of memorabilia. In 1947, the weapon disappeared again. Woodbridge, after 2 years of quiet ownership, found his home burglarized. The golden gun vanished into the shadows of a post-war world hungry for spoils, no different than the looters who had scavenged through the ruins of Europe. It had disappeared into the black market, a piece of history lost perhaps forever. The phantom resurfaces. 4 years, the golden gun lay in obscurity, its story hidden from the public eye. But in the early 1950s, the weapon reappeared, as if summoned by fate. Detective Richard Powers of the Wichita, Kansas Police Department spotted it at a regional gun show, tucked away behind the counter of a local vendor. At first glance, Powers didn't recognize it for what it was, but as he took in the ornate details, the engraving, the craftsmanship, the unmistakable initials of the Führer, he knew it could not be a mere replica. This was a genuine article. Powers lacked the funds to purchase it, but his investigative instincts kicked in. He convinced the vendor to let him take the weapon to the local crime lab, where he photographed the details meticulously, every curve of the barrel, the intricate engravings, the worn ivory handle that had once rested in Hitler's hands. Powers' fascination with the gun only grew. Was it a relic, or was it something more? His suspicions deepened, but before he could investigate further, the gun vanished once again. The dealer, unwilling to part with his new treasure, refused to let it stay in law enforcement hands. Long it was soon gone, slipping back into the dark recesses of the underground world of stolen war memorabilia. The gun's phantom nature continued to haunt the world, reappearing just when it seemed forgotten. In 1966, it surfaced again, this time as the feature piece of a high-profile article in Argosy magazine. The weapon was now in the possession of a gun dealer in Cleveland, Ohio. It was mentioned that the golden pistol was being offered for sale, drawing the attention of collectors far and wide. It seemed that the ghost of Hitler's gift had once again slipped through history's cracks into the hands of those who viewed it not as a symbol of tyranny but as an artifact of undeniable historical value. But it wasn't long before the gun's next owner would claim it as his own. Andrew Wright, a reclusive Canadian collector with a known obsession for Nazi-era artifacts, bought the pistol. Wright, a man of considerable wealth and eccentricities, had made a name for himself by hoarding rare and valuable pieces of the past. He displayed the gun proudly in his personal museum located on his property in Swift Current, Saskatchewan. Yet despite his extensive collection and the notoriety it had gained, the gun's story would take another bizarre turn. Though displayed for years, no real public interest was generated. The gun, like many other relics of the past, seemed to quietly fade into obscurity once more. Wright's obsession, however, was not for the sake of history. It was personal, driven by a deep and perhaps unhealthy fixation on the past. And with that fixation came the quiet awareness that some things were never meant to be put on display, especially when they were tied to one of history's darkest chapters. The curse of value. In 1987, the Golden Walther PP made its way to auction, where it shattered expectations. The auction house, renowned for handling high-profile military artifacts, had set the opening bid at a modest $20,000. But as the gavel struck, the price soared beyond anyone's wildest predictions, reaching an unprecedented $114,000, a jaw-dropping figure that stunned both collectors and experts. At the time, it was the highest price ever paid for a piece of military memorabilia, underscoring the weapon's dark allure. The Walther PP's journey didn't stop there. After the auction, it passed through the hands of various owners, each one more intrigued than the last by its sinister history. One such owner was Australian construction magnate Warren Anderson, who, attracted by the gun's dangerous mystique, added it to his collection of rare artifacts. But like so many before him, Anderson's ownership was brief. After only a few years, the weapon was sold to a gun dealer based in Georgia, and from there it made its way to an unnamed West Coast collector. It seemed that the weapon was once again quietly resting in the shadows, far from the public eye. But its curse was far from over. During a sale in Cleveland in 1966, another chilling detail came to light. The gun dealer, upon examining the weapon before the transaction, discovered something that would haunt him for years to come: dried blood beneath the ivory grips. The blood wasn't fresh, yet the discovery sent a ripple of unease through the room. What was the true story behind this ominous clue? Was it a sign of the weapon's bloody past, an artifact tainted by violence far beyond its original design? At the time, no forensic tests were conducted on the bloodstain. The dealer, too shocked by the discovery, opted not to investigate further. But as the years passed, the question lingered. Was the blood left behind by Lieutenant Palm, the soldier who had first retrieved the gun after the harrowing battle near Munich? Palm had been wounded in the same skirmish. Perhaps it was his blood, marking his connection to the weapon, a blood-soaked souvenir of the war. Or was it something more sinister, a remnant from a darker chapter? There were whispers that the blood belonged not to Palm, but to someone else. Some speculated that it might have been left by another victim, someone who had met a brutal end, symbolic of the gun's connection to Hitler's bloody legacy. But no one could say for sure. Experts disagreed on the blood's origin, and with no chain of custody to trace its history, the truth remained shrouded in mystery. The chilling possibility that it was a final, symbolic act carried out with the very weapon that Hitler had prized fueled the dark allure of the gun. And so, despite its continued circulation through various hands, the symbolism of the golden weapon only grew stronger. It was no longer just a rare collector's item, it had become an enshrined object of violence, a talisman marked by blood. The story would forever be linked to the twisted legacy of the Nazi regime, and with each passing year the questions surrounding it would only deepen, adding to its curse. The mysterious golden gun. For decades the whereabouts of Adolf Hitler's Golden Walther PP pistol were shrouded in mystery, tantalizing historians and treasure hunters alike. Rumors had circulated through the darkened corridors of European museums as whispers of the weapon's final resting place drifted like smoke through the ages. Some claimed it had been secreted away in a bunker, others speculated it was tucked inside the vaults of a high-profile collector. But despite numerous expeditions, public claims, and private searches, the golden gun remained elusive. Until 2005, when a private collector inadvertently set the stage for its rediscovery. A cryptic photograph surfaced on the internet, the image revealing a golden weapon encased in a gleaming glass box, pristine and untouched by time. The photo had been leaked by an anonymous source and spread like wildfire across the internet, igniting a new wave of excitement and disbelief. There, resting delicately within a climate-controlled vault, was Hitler's fabled Walther PP with its floral engravings and ivory grips glinting in the soft lighting. But the revelation wasn't as simple as finding a historical artifact. The gun had not been hidden in the shadows of a forgotten warehouse or beneath the floorboards of an old estate. It was now in the possession of a powerful, wealthy financier. This individual, with deep ties to an international arms-dealing syndicate, had safeguarded the weapon in an undisclosed location for years. The implications were chilling. The golden pistol, revered for its symbolism, was no longer just a relic of history. It was being actively preserved for reasons far darker than mere nostalgia. As investigations into the weapon's new owner deepened, a sinister picture began to emerge. The collector, it turned out, had long been an influential figure in far-right extremist circles across Europe and South America. It was no longer just a museum piece. It had become a powerful symbol passed among underground networks, shown off in secretive ceremonies where its gleaming gold surface seemed to glow with an unsettling resonance. The weapon was treated as an object of reverence, with images of it shared on encrypted forums dedicated to far-right activism. The gun's history, steeped in Nazi grandeur, had been co-opted into the propaganda of a new generation of hate. What had once been a gift of opulence to a dictator now stood at the heart of a global movement, its significance no longer limited to the pages of history but alive in the rhetoric of hate-filled modern-day extremists. The legacy of Hitler's golden gun had taken a darker turn, one that would continue to haunt the world for years to come. The occult connection. In the quest to unravel the mysteries surrounding Adolf Hitler's golden Walther PP, historians turned to the archives of the Ahnenerbe. Buried deep within their cryptic notes and coded memos, researchers discovered startling references to a sunbless weapon. These mentions were fleeting, but they painted a chilling picture, a weapon imbued with the mystical aura of Aryan purity, designed not merely for war but for something far more sinister. The description in these documents was eerily specific, matching the golden Walther in every detail. The floral engravings, the ivory grips, the gilded initials, all were referenced in the Ahnenerbe's occult texts, marking the weapon as something more than just a personal gift for Hitler. It was, according to the files, a symbolic item meant to embody the will of the Reich. Some historians theorize that the weapon was used in ritualistic ceremonies by the SS in an effort to bind the Führer's ideals to a spiritual dimension, elevating the regime's vision to divine status. The notion of the golden Walther as a sacred weapon became more plausible with each new discovery. It was not merely a tool of violence, it was a conduit for the Nazi ideology, a relic imbued with occult significance, an object of worship for a regime that sought to merge politics with mysticism. According to a chilling theory, the SS may have used the gun in ceremonies that aimed to purify the Aryan race through blood sacrifice, using occult powers to enforce their twisted vision of racial superiority. The golden Walther was no longer just a gun, it was a symbol of the dark heart of Nazi propaganda, sanctified through ritual and bloodshed. The discovery of Hitler's golden gun was only the beginning. While many believed it was simply a war trophy, a gleaming symbol of Nazi excess, the true horror lies not in its creation but in what it has become. A weapon originally forged as a birthday gift for the Führer now exists as a perverse fetish, revered not for its craftsmanship but for the ideology it represents. Its journey through history, from the walls of the Chancellery, to the battlefield, and then onto the black market, has transformed it into a roadmap of extremism, one that has left an indelible mark on the 20th and 21st centuries. What was once a physical manifestation of Hitler's megalomania has evolved into an object of idolization within far-right circles. Its symbolism has been twisted, its historical significance distorted. In the modern era, the gun has become more than just a historical artifact. It is a tool of radicalization. Online forums, often encrypted and hidden from mainstream view, feature images of the gun altered with modern far-right slogans paired with the images of extremists who revere it as a symbol of purity and power. The gun, like its owners, has become part of a dark mythos woven into the fabric of contemporary hate groups. Its continued presence in these circles is more than just a historical anomaly, it represents the persistent and dangerous legacy of Nazi ideology still alive and well in the far reaches of the Internet. The gun has transcended time and place, moving through decades from a dictatorial symbol of power to a key player in the radicalization of modern hate movements. Its idolization in these groups serves as a reminder of how easily symbols of terror and violence can be repurposed to serve new generations of extremists. The Golden Walther's journey is far more sinister than its polished surface lets on. Its role in the modern world is not just that of a historical curiosity, but a living, breathing symbol that continues to fuel the flames of hatred and division. What was once a gleaming gift has become an emblem of terror, its power still being wielded by those who seek to perpetuate a vision of supremacy, division, and violence. Hitler's golden gun was real, and it's far worse than we imagined. Its legacy, long after its original creators have faded into history, has woven itself into the fabric of global extremism. The weapon, initially crafted for one man's vanity, has become a beacon of hate, still gleaming, still alive, and still influencing the world in ways that no one could have foreseen. Do you believe historical artifacts like this should be displayed, destroyed, or hidden forever? Share your thoughts in the comments.